You're listening to the FitPro Sessions with Parallel Coaching, episode number 11. Hi, I'm Neil Bergman, and in today's podcast, I'm talking to Hayley from Parallel Coaching, all about revision, and we got the Revision Power Hour. Specifically, we're going to talk about the heart and circulatory system, so stay tuned. Before we jump into today's FitPro session, head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review if you're enjoying the FitPro Sessions so far. We're 1 week in, we are 10 or so episodes in right now, and we went right into the bottom of the charts and we peaked in the mid-20s so far. The feedback has been phenomenal.
Yes.
We've had tons of messages on email, on Messenger, and in the reviews as well. So if you are enjoying it, please go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. Outside of that, let's jump into today's FitPro session. Hi, I'm Neil Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a FitPro doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support, and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify, and kickstart as a FitPro? This is the FitPro Sessions Podcast with Parallel Coaching.
This is the closest I've been to Hayley for almost a week. I'm not joking. She's got one stinking cold, and I'm not particularly happy being this close to her, even though we are married. So,
thank you.
You're welcome, Hayley. How are we doing?
Oh, good.
So,
okay, it's not contagious over a podcast.
It's not contagious over a podcast, but it is contagious when you're within 8 inches of each other. So if you're watching on YouTube now, you'll see that we're pretty close as we're sharing the microphone. Today, we are, however, talking about the heart and circulatory system. Fantastic, says Hayley. Okay, we're going to be dialing into the heart and circulatory system, which is one of the 8 modules from your anatomy and physiology exam, whether you're level 2 or level 3. And I'm going to pass all of the nitty-gritty sciencey stuff over to Hayley very shortly. But you need to know this, and you may want to go back and repeat this podcast, this particular FitPro session, multiple times over, as 4 to 8 questions in your exam will come from this topic. So depending on your training provider, you're going to get 40 questions in your final exam. Okay, if you get 8 questions from heart and circulatory system, that's almost, it is 20% of your exam from this one module. So you could win and lose your exam purely based on your understanding of the heart and circulatory system.
What I love about this, before we even get started, what I love is that by us now doing a big deep dive into heart and circulatory system, I know it's been something that's been really, really popular on our YouTube, on our blogs, and time again, no matter how much content we put out there that relates to the circulatory system, the structure of the heart, the heart and circulatory system combined, no matter how much information we put out, it's always super relevant to the exams and to the content that you need to know as a FitPro as well. And again, I know that this will be really well received and people can rinse and repeat lots of times over.
Do you remember that video that I recorded? You balanced the video over a bit of paper. We were in Kanchanaburi, which was the bridge over the River Kwai in Thailand. And somebody asked on our YouTube, do we have a more simplified version of the flow of blood around the body, the systemic circulation and the pulmonary circulation, which we're going to talk about today? And we literally filmed it. It was in under 60-second challenge. And we just used 2 colors, red and blue, for oxygenated, deoxygenated. And it's gone on to reach like 100,000 views.
Maybe in the show notes, we should even link to that.
Let's add that up. Okay, so, and that was 2015. Yeah. So, we've been blogging and posting about the heart and circulatory system for a lot of years. And the same old questions come up time and time again. Okay, so over to you, Hayley. Where do we start?
I suppose the main thing is that we need to understand why we need to know about the heart and circulatory system at all as a FitPro outside of the exam. So although you could win or lose your exam based on the knowledge that you know about the heart and circulatory system, it's also really important to know about how this relates to how can I keep it straight? Those of you on the podcast won't have any idea what happened there, but Neil's making faces in the camera.
I am making funny faces in the camera. I also understand that Hayley's got like one breath allows her to get a certain amount of words out.
I sound really nasally. I'm really sorry.
So I may have to repeat parts of it, but carry on. The importance of learning anatomy and physiology outside of the exam, heart and circulation.
Absolutely. You must understand the A&P adaptations of the heart brought about by training towards a particular goal. So if you
mic drop. I love that. The A&P adaptations brought about by training towards a particular goal.
Absolutely. So training brings about a certain demand on the body. So whenever you do any training, something will change in the body. Similarly, if you do no training, something will change in the body. And this is what we've mentioned time and time again already on the podcast, is something called specific adaptation to an imposed demand. The SAID principle. And this demand that we create on our body every time we put a stressor on it creates an adaptation in our anatomy.
So the question is what adaptation do you need to make in order to get the goal? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
What adaptation do I need to bring about through training, through smart planning, to bring about an adaptation within the client's heart and circulatory system? What do I need to do inside my planning as a fitness professional, whether I'm personal training, yoga, Pilates, aqua, kids fitness, it doesn't matter what approach, what do I need to do in my planning inside my delivery of a particular session or group of sessions to bring about adaptation of the heart and circulatory system? That's what we're saying, right?
Absolutely.
Superb. So give me an example.
Let's take an example. Let's have a client. Let's call him Fred.
We read it off the screen. It's like we planned this.
Fred wants to get a PB in a local 10K run. So if he's got this kind of CV based goal, so he wants to get a personal best, so that means he wants to improve his fitness levels, and he also potentially wants to run faster and further, so it's on a local 10K run. There's certain measurements that you'd want to take at the beginning of your time working with your client, so Fred, to check that where he is and what his status is, and also to measure his improvement. So you'd want to know like his submaximal VO2 max. So first of all, a VO2 max is
the volume of oxygen that you can take in, transport and utilize and get a result from.
Awesome.
Boom. So VO2, the amount of oxygen you can take in, transport and utilize. So take in through the nose and mouth, transport the oxygen around the body to the working muscles and utilize that and bring about a training response. So I could do that via a Cooper run test, a Rockport walk test, depending.
And it'll give you a standardized number, so you could compare your number to Paula Radcliffe's number.
Remember, we're talking about submaximal here, so there's an element of validity. However, these are protocols that have been tried and tested.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of the Cooper run, which is 12 minutes on a treadmill. How far can I get inside 12 minutes?
And that would be appropriate for Fred.
Because he's going to be running. So again, I would choose, we've got Fred as a runner, so we would choose ideally a running based test.
Yeah.
To measure.
What other tests would you put in there, or what other things would you find out early on?
I would want to know, ideally, as close to Fred's anaerobic threshold as possible. So 80% effort.
Yeah.
Okay. So on a 1 to 10 RPE scale, 8 out of 10. Okay. Yeah. Or 16 on the old Borg scale. Okay. Don't laugh at me. Okay. So yeah, I'd want to know that. I could do that using a cruise interval.
Yes.
So I could take my client through a cruise interval, get them up to their 80%, get my words out, and spend a couple of minutes above and below and find out the heart rate at the point he perceives himself to go anaerobic.
Yeah,
I could also use a heart rate monitor to assess
and
that.
You can kind of look at those as well and see what's happening in his body physiologically. When is the point where he is just hardly answering your questions? He can only give one-word answers. Where's the point where he's focusing to the point that he now is anaerobic? And they're really good signs, aren't they, that they are anaerobic?
Yeah, completely. Because if they were aerobic, they were able to utilize oxygen aerobically, therefore you can breathe in and out, and therefore you can talk. But if you can't talk, that's a clear sign that the client isn't within an aerobic zone.
Yeah.
There we
Awesome.
go. I'd also want to know their heart rate, resting heart rate more so, over a period of time. I'd want to know maybe their peak flow, so the efficiency of the breath out, and resting heart rate, which we've already mentioned.
Nice. What I really like about these as measurements is that you do need to understand what's going on in the body to understand those. And actually, with those measurements, they're not necessarily measuring the heart. The only one of those is resting heart rate and blood pressure, potentially.
You could do blood pressure, yeah. We didn't mention that one.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
And obviously we said about heart rate at the anaerobic threshold. But other than that, they link over and they move between multiple different topics within our anatomy and physiology. So it's also crossing into energy systems and how the body is working as a whole throughout all of them. So without really knowing the ins and outs to the heart and circulatory system, you can't truly measure, manage and monitor your client from the very start of working with them. And also, you can't really educate them. So, like, let's say, for example, we're working with Fred, and he's doing his submaximal test, or he's doing his cruise interval, and he's not understanding what it feels like to go anaerobic. He doesn't understand why the numbers go up whilst he's training. If you can explain to him why the numbers are going up, why his heart rate's increasing, why his blood pressure is higher when he's been doing activity compared to when he's resting. If you can explain these things, it's going to not only alleviate some anxiety, but it's going to probably include a lot of things about why he's doing it, and actually that adaptation to his body, not just going through the process.
You link the actual session to the end goal.
Nice.
And now you've created some meaning to that session, which is in turn will create some adherence.
Yeah.
And therefore adherence, if a client turns up, which is frequency within the FIT principle, they are going to get their goal, which I think is probably the number one variable why so many people fail when it comes to health and fitness is frequency. And they don't truly understand the meaning why, or the meanings behind what it is they're doing. Yeah. So as a fitness professional, it's my duty, I believe it's my duty to understand anatomy and physiology at a deep level, so then I can tell my client the simple version.
Yeah,
okay?
Exactly.
So
and keep it simple.
I always use the analogy of, if I can understand something complex and then break it down and kind of write it in Crayola crayons for my client, then they're going to understand. They don't need to understand the ins and outs to the bicuspid and tricuspid valve, but I need to know that as a fitness professional, so I can go on and plan effectively and bring about a training response and adaptation to the heart.
Absolutely. And if they value the reason why they're doing it is deeper than just the process of doing it, they're more likely to train regularly. Like you said, the frequency is going to go up. They're more likely to adhere to the program you set because they can see the adaptation.
What I want to pick out on very quickly though is also you mentioned the heart and circulatory system, heart and lungs can't be truly understood without knowing the other modules or subsystems of the body. So like you said, if I'm going to dish out a Cooper run test or a cruise interval, I must understand energy systems, but I can't understand energy systems without the heart and lungs. I can't understand heart and circulation and energy systems without understanding the skeletal system of how the body moves and posture. And therefore module 4, body in motion, and that links to muscles, muscle actions, origins and insertions. So it's kind of one tangled spider's web, but I can't truly understand the heart and lungs without understanding the anatomy of other parts. And we mentioned in the very first revision one, but anatomy is the study of the body, whereas the physiology is the function of that.
Yes. And hopefully this isn't a digression, but quite often with learners that are going through our Revision Mastery Bootcamp, people want the first module is heart and circulatory system. And quite often I'll speak to a learner and they'll be like, God, I'm doing really well. I've spent so many hours working on it so far. And I'm like, okay, you've been doing it for like 3-4 weeks. And they're like, I'm still on module 1.
I wrote this in a blog.
How many times have you been through it?
An email, in fact, yesterday. And I said, one of the best things to do is we are digressing now. I called it spaced repetition.
Nice.
So spaced repetition is where you learn, for example, you might listen to this podcast, okay? There might be certain parts of this podcast or this FitPro session that you didn't quite understand, but you're going to go on and listen to other things over the next 2 or 3 days. And I encourage you to do that. Go back and listen to one of our other FitPro sessions before you come back and re-listen to this. And it's in that time, that space, that's where your short-term memory can download into your long-term memories for you to recall it and repeat it. But repetition is the mother of all skill. The key, two key things here are: one, spaced repetition. There must be space between your first repetition and your second repetition, not back to back.
Okay, yeah.
But also the key part is that you do come back and repeat it.
Yes.
So the thing I said in my email was, for example, in the revision bootcamp, do module 1.
Yeah.
Move on to, say, a cheat sheet, module 2 and module 3. Come back to module 1. Go back to module 2, module 3, module 4. Come back to number 1. Go back to module 3, module 4. Come back to number 1.
And also,
1.
like, in doing that, you get all the context of the knowledge from the rest of it, which is what you were saying about the energy system to help you understand the heart and circulatory.
Yeah, completely.
So it all combines, and it means that if you can go over and grasp a little bit of knowledge about everything before you layer on the next level.
This also explains why so many people, myself included at times, feel like we don't know anything in the moment when we're learning or revising. I understand, it's frustrating. You read something, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. And I believe that's why, is that you haven't downloaded that information yet. And you haven't had enough repetition or enough time or space for your brain to actually absorb that into its long-term memory for you to recall it.
Yeah.
I expect to read it and to be able to recall it like that.
Absolutely.
But our brains don't work like that. Anyway, let's get into the nitty and gritty of this. So,
absolutely.
So I'm going to pass you over to the very nasally Hayley here. Don't sing. But no one wants to hear that, least of all me, whilst I'm this close to you. So,
are you sure?
I am sure, very sure. So, the circulatory system, where do we start? Go for it.
Okay, so probably the first place to start is the fact that we have 3 circulatory systems. But before I kind of go into that, just to let you know that it is composed of the heart itself, as well as blood vessels. So that's what we're talking about. When we say about the heart and circulatory system, you've got the heart, and the circulatory system are blood vessels. That's arteries, veins, and capillaries.
Cool. So summary: the heart and the circulatory system are the blood vessels, including arteries, veins, and capillaries.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then if we look at the 3 circulatory systems that we have in our bodies, so the
in our body or bodies?
We have 2 bodies between us.
That's true. And I have a body and you have a body.
A body. So our body, our bodies, because it's ours.
It is. Or yours. It's not mine. So our bodies have 3 circulatory systems: a pulmonary circulatory system, a systemic circulatory system, and the coronary circulatory system. Cool. So tell me about, there we go.
The word pulmonary refers to lungs. So the pulmonary circulation is a short loop that is basically the blood flow being pumped from the heart structure itself back to the lungs and then it comes back to the heart again. So it's that short loop that's going between the heart and the lungs.
So it goes heart to the lungs to the heart.
Perfect.
And if you think about your body now, that's not that far a distance really.
Yeah,
if it has to go, it's, think where the heart and the lungs are located, it's not got to go very far. Whereas the systemic circulation, I think this is what most people see as the circulatory system. And we're talking about blood from the heart to all other parts of the body and back again. So absolutely. From my heart to my little toe and back again, from my heart to my little finger and back again. I don't know why I chose the little finger and little toe. From my heart to my little ears and back again. For those of you watching, I have the tiniest ears in the world. So that's for systemic circulation, not just your little toe, little finger and ears, but any other body part. So heart,
organs, muscles.
There we go. Yeah.
Everything.
And then the third one
is the coronary circulatory system. This is different. So when you're learning your circulation, you learn about the pulmonary and the systemic. But off of one of those, off of the branch of the systemic, comes the coronary circulatory system. So as soon as it leaves the heart, it then has to fuel itself first. So it's basically sending a blood flow into the heart structure itself. And this will serve it, so give nutrients and oxygen directly into the muscle of the heart. And that's the coronary circulatory system. So if you hear the word coronary circulatory, it's talking about the arteries and the veins that serve the heart muscle itself.
And this is a key question. It's not for me to suggest that you might get this, certainly at level 3.
Yes.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
I bloody well did. There we go. So there's a key part there. Coronary circulatory system is all about the heart. Okay.
Yeah.
So your heart is a muscle, just like your quadricep is a muscle.
Yeah.
And it requires oxygen all the time. It's an aerobic cardiac muscle that requires to be beating 24/7, 365. It never stops. So it's constantly working aerobically. Therefore, it's got to have a perfect supply of oxygen all the time. Correct?
Correct.
There we go.
Absolutely.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a FitPro? This is the FitPro Sessions Podcast with Parallel Coaching.
And the heart is the key organ in the circulatory system as a hollow muscular pump. Its main function is to propel blood throughout the body. And that's what we said about the pulmonary and systemic circulatory system.
I got some really cool facts
about
the heart.
Facts. Okay,
I got some
like
really cool facts. I found these out over the last couple of days, and I
These
sent them
may
out.
or may not help you on your exam.
They may or may not,
but you can maybe wow your clients with them.
Completely. Did you know, Hayley, that the heart beats 60 to 100 times per minute?
Makes sense.
And I'm quite stressed at the moment, so it's actually closer to 100 times per minute. Okay, but it can go much faster, as we know. What's the highest you've seen on your heart rate during training, during running?
190 something.
I've seen a 192.
Wow.
192, which wasn't particularly pleasant. But did you know it beats about 100,000 times a day? So that's more than 30 million times per year.
Wow.
Or about 2.5 billion times in a 70-year-old lifetime.
That's amazing, isn't it?
2.5 billion times.
Amazing.
Another fun fact, you ready? During the average lifetime, a heart pumps 1 million barrels of blood. That's enough to fill more than 3 super tankers.
Nice.
There we go. So you can go on to talk to your client and wow them with useless facts about the heart. Let's have one more. Pick a number, Hayley, between 1 and 5. 4. Blood takes about 20 seconds to circulate through the entire vascular system.
Wow.
That's pretty cool, isn't it? 20 seconds.
That's actually quite a while, isn't it?
That's quite a while. So to go from literally left ventricle all the way back through all systems back to the left ventricle. I will give you one more. Blood makes up 7% of body weight. So if a client weighs 100 kgs, 7 kilograms or roughly 1 stone comes from blood.
Well, that's 7 kilos they're not going to lose, isn't it?
That's
with all the fat burning in the world.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, completely. And I think that's a really key consideration when we're talking about lean mass versus fat mass. Lean mass, weight of blood would come into that calculation.
Yeah,
okay,
nice.
So
that's fun.
There we go.
Thank you for your fun fact.
Fun fact, didn't hear you laughing, but let's move on. Clearly my fun heart facts didn't actually get you going. Here we go. Let's go for it.
So a lot of those facts that you were talking about involved kind of the quantity of blood that we had and how quickly that goes around the body. The heart does get the messages from the body that tells it when to pump more or less blood. So if you're moving lots, it will pump more blood, i.e. your heart rate will increase, your cardiac output will increase, and this is a way of getting more blood to the needed muscles. So
if you're going to do a lower body legs day, for example, okay, you're going to have more blood in the lower extremities, in the lower working leg muscles, and therefore blood's going to be sent to those because that's where the demand is. Is that what we're saying? Cool.
And then if you had something like a PHA,
peripheral heart action, which is a type of circuit-based approach.
Yes.
Let's not leave them guessing on this one.
Then that would shunt blood between the legs and the upper body, legs and upper body. So you alternate a leg exercise with an upper body exercise with no rest in between, going around a circuit.
Should go legs, upper body, legs, upper body, legs, upper body. So the demand on the body is far greater now because the heart was going to pump or propel blood to, let's say, the quads and hamstrings, and all the way back up to shoulders, and then all the way back down to calves, and all the way back up to arms, and all the way back down to legs, and all the way back up to chest. So the demand on heart rate goes through the roof.
Yeah, exactly.
So this isn't for a beginner client then, I take it.
No, but can you, no, not for a beginner. But you could also see how that would have more of an adaptation on your heart and your ability to pump blood around the body, and more of an adaptation on your cardiac output than just going around and doing, say, normal multiple sets of just upper body day. So if your client has need for some sort of cardiovascular adaptation or a want to
have you just linked training systems? Have you just linked the selection of a training system to anatomy and physiology?
Yes, I have.
There we go. I like it. I like it a lot. So rather than, let's say, do multiple sets, which would be 3-4 sets, let's say leg press, for example, say four sets of 12 on legs, the blood's being sent to the legs. It stays there. We have our rest. We stay on the legs. The blood stays there. So there's no major demand on the heart.
Yeah.
Well, there is a demand there, but it's in comparison to, say, PHA, where the blood goes from quads up to shoulders, back down to hamstrings to upper back, back down to calves to shoulders, back down to legs to back up to shoulders, for example. Yes. The heart now has to work that much harder, beat that much more. Heart rate comes up, stroke volume, cardiac output increases. Therefore, the strength of the left ventricle as the heart as a whole is improved.
Exactly. So Boom. You don't only get the benefits in the muscle, you also get it in the heart muscle and how that adapts.
I want to rewind back a little bit. You also said about warm up, and I like this part because if
Did
a client,
say about a warm up?
You mentioned the word warm up, which made my brain go here. So if I don't do a warm up myself or with a client, that's going to impact enjoyment, how they feel, and therefore adherence. We don't do things if we don't enjoy it.
Yeah,
so if I don't,
goes back to your frequency again.
So if I don't elevate my client through a structured ramp warm up or a Mars warm up, which is what we teach on level 2 and then level 3. So level 2 we talk about Mars, and then at level 3 we'll talk about a ramp warm up.
Yeah.
If I don't take the client through that and slowly increase the heart rate, slowly increase the heart and circulatory system, the moment we get into the first part of the main session, they're just going to feel screwed.
Yeah.
Technical term there. They're going to be spent. They're going to be overwhelmed.
Also, you know this personally. Like if you've ever gone out for a run and you start out too quick, you don't really do a warm up. You feel shattered in the first 5 minutes because your energy systems aren't ready. Your heart isn't ready. Everything isn't ready yet.
So the warm up prepares for mind and body.
Yeah.
And the module 1, anatomy, it prepares the heart and circulatory system for what's to come, which is the last part of ramp, which is potentiate, which is about potentiating the energy through the body and bringing the body up to the speed or the power output of your first exercise or first round.
Love it.
Boom.
So really what we're saying is that there's a need to understand everything about the heart just as much as there is to know about the muscles or the energy system in relation to your client's planning and understanding adaptation.
Let's jump into then the heart structure.
Yeah.
Let's get into some like real nitty gritty A&P. So the heart structure.
Yeah. So the heart has 4 chambers. That's
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's how you count to 4.
That is how you count to 4.
And they're enclosed by thick muscular walls. So it's a really muscular chambers that you have within your heart. It lies between the lungs and is just slightly left to the middle of the chest cavity. I didn't even need to tell you that. You knew it was here. It's roughly...
that could be a great level 2 A&P question, though.
Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
Is the heart located? It would be obvious where it is. But the wording
just
of that...
Just to the left of the middle?
Yeah, the wording of that
Chest
question
cavity?
Could put people off.
What's another name for the chest cavity?
I'm not sure. You tell me.
Thoracic?
Oh, yeah, thoracic.
Yeah.
I didn't know where you were going with that. I thought you were going to catch me out.
That will come up.
So thoracic cavity.
Absolutely.
Cool. So the bottom part of the heart is divided into 2 chambers called the right and left ventricles.
Yep.
These pump blood out of the heart.
Yes.
Okay. So...
and there's basically in between the 2 vertebrae.
Vertebra? Where are you?
2 ventricles.
The right ventricle and the left ventricle. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have an interventricular septum. Now, septum is the name for the thing that basically divides down the middle of the heart. When you look at an image of the heart, now the vertical sort of line down through the middle, that gap is your septum. That's the bit that's separating your right from your left sides of your heart.
So I'm going to try and say this. Interventricular septum.
Boom.
Interventricular septum divides the right and left ventricle. So they're the 2 bottom chambers, whereas the upper part of the heart, again, there's 2 chambers of the right and left atria.
Yeah.
Okay, so the right and left atria receive blood entering the heart. So
Yes.
the atria receive blood.
Yes.
And the ventricles pump blood away.
Yeah, exactly. So there's only 2 pumping chambers and 2 collecting chambers. It's really important to know that. And actually, I remember atria as, if you've ever been to a theatre, it's an atrium that is the entrance hall to that theatre. So the atria is where it's collected. It's the collecting entrance hall.
So I'm guessing that there's another really odd word that I can't pronounce between the right and left atria.
Yeah. Interatrial septum.
Interatrial septum.
Yes.
Cool.
Perfect.
That means divide the right and left atria.
Yes.
Cool. So the ventricles, right and left, have the interventricular septum, and the right and left atria have the interatrial septum. Cool. Anything else we need to know about the heart?
Just it's got some valves as well. We kind of
Just
need to
some
know
valves.
those.
We need to know about some valves, people. If you're doing your level 2 and level 3, there's a few valves.
Two types of valves.
Cool. Two
First
types of
one,
valves.
atrioventricular. I'm pumping out all these long words for you today, but breaking down these words, atrio and ventricular as a valve, literally saying it's between the atrium and the ventricle. So the key is in how it's spelled.
So it's actually going to be key. If we put this in the show notes and you're going through this, you can press pause at this point. In fact, I encourage you to press pause. Go and look at the show notes, or go over to the blog associated with this on the Parallel Coaching website. Find this blog and look at how it's spelled. So it's atrioventricular. So you can see that it's the atria and the ventricles and the valve between those two. So we're talking specifically here about the tricuspid and bicuspid valves.
That's the one.
That's for one.
Now that means that there are basically, if you look at like the heart strings, this is what's known as the heart strings, these valves. When you look at an anatomical picture of a heart, you can see these like stringy things going down through the middle. That's the atrioventricular valves. Now the valves are basically separating the atria from the ventricles and preventing any backflow going back up into the atria. So they keep the blood flow down into the ventricles. So it's like a one-way system. Now these valves, Neale mentioned tricuspid and bicuspid.
I always remember tricuspid because it's got an R in it. Whereas bicuspid doesn't.
Yes.
Tricuspid has an R in it. Therefore, it's on the right side of the heart.
Awesome.
Therefore, the bicuspid, by default, has to be on the left.
Perfect. So tricuspid and bicuspid valves, both of these are atrioventricular valves. And like Neale said, tricuspid's on the right, bicuspid, or sometimes called the mitral valve, is on the left.
Depending on your ward and body, they might refer to the bicuspid valve as the mitral valve, and that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's key to remember that the bicuspid valve might be called something else. The main thing these valves do is they prevent backflow. So they prevent blood going back from the ventricles back into the atria. Cool.
Exactly.
Let's move on.
Next type of valves that we have are the ones that separate the ventricles. Remember, that was the bottom pumping chamber, and the blood vessels that take blood away from the heart. So these blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart are always called the arteries. So we've got...
Can I tell you another key thing here? Arteries start with A, and arteries always go away from the heart.
Perfect.
Arteries always go away from the heart.
I like it. So the two valves that you have that are, we've already had our atrioventricular valves. Now the next two types of valves that we've got are the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve. The pulmonary valve is going to separate the right ventricle from the pulmonary artery, which is the blood flow going from the right ventricle as it's pumped up through the pulmonary artery towards the lungs. And then you've got the aortic valve, which is the other side, that's off the left ventricle. And this aortic valve is preventing backflow from going from that left ventricle all the way out to the aorta and preventing it from coming back into the ventricle from there.
There's a couple of key things to you can kind of hack here, or have a memory hack to recall this information. If you think about the pulmonary artery, arteries always go away, but we're talking about the pulmonary valve. That's part of the pulmonary system. Therefore, it has to be on the right side of the heart, coming out of the right ventricle. Whereas the aortic valve is going into the aorta, which is part of the systemic system.
Yes.
Cool. The other thing I want to highlight is the blood pressure at this point is going to be at its greatest, certainly from the left ventricle. So this valve, is only going to open one way anyway and prevent backflow purely based on blood pressure alone.
Yes. Yeah. And the blood pressure is going to be massive because it's got to go around the whole body.
Completely.
Awesome.
Or to the working muscles. So we've gone through the structure and function. Let's move on now to the arteries. And we've already mentioned that arteries carry blood away from the heart, A for away. They're the thickest blood vessels with muscular walls that contract to keep the blood moving away from the heart towards the body or to the working muscle.
Yeah, nice.
So it's specifically inside the systemic circulation here. It's oxygen-rich blood. It's pumped from the heart into the aorta, into this huge artery that curves up and back from the left ventricle. Then it heads down in front of the spinal column into the abdomen. You don't need to know all this, I suppose, in great depth, but it's nice to understand the journey. And then the two coronary arteries break off at the beginning of the aorta, which Hayley's already mentioned. And obviously that then goes back into the heart for coronary circulation. Yep. So the two, the two coronary arteries branch off at the beginning of the aorta and divide into a network of smaller arteries that provide oxygen and nourishment for the muscles of the heart.
Perfectly said.
There we go.
Yeah, exactly. So
cool.
That's your main thing about arteries and the coronary arteries as well. So the other part of this, other than the aorta, you also have another artery, and this is the pulmonary artery. This is the other main artery in the body. This one is going to have oxygen poor blood because it's going to take totally opposite to the aorta in that had oxygen rich blood. This is going to carry deoxygenated blood, and it's going to take it from the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery, which is then dividing the right and left branches on the way to the lungs where the blood picks up the oxygen. So right and left lungs, it's got to divide off to those. As they get further away from the heart, the arteries branch out into arterioles, which are smaller and less elastic. So they kind of break down. If you imagine like a tree, you've got the trunk, that's the main two, like the aorta or the pulmonary artery. Then they break off into these branches, which is the arterioles. And then after the arterioles, it breaks down into really small little capillaries. And these are kind of like the leaves, I suppose, on your tree.
And they're like 1 cell thick because this is where all the magic happens. And, I'm going to say that the capillaries are the most important part of the whole circulatory system.
Oh, you can't make sure one's more important than another. But yeah, I know what you mean.
It's through the capillaries that nutrients and oxygen are delivered to the actual cell.
Actually gets there.
So if you think this whole process, blood has been transporting oxygen, it's not until it gets to the capillaries that it's this tiny part of the whole circulatory system. It's like 1 cell thick that the nutrients and oxygen can actually be diffused into those cells and actually do the job it's meant to do.
Yeah, perfect.
So I'm going to say it's the most important.
Okay. And in addition to waste products such as carbon dioxide are also removed by the capillaries. So all of the oxygen gets into the cells via the capillaries and all the waste products come out of the cells via capillaries.
So it's the network of tiny capillaries that connects the arteries and the veins.
They are the bridge.
They are the bridge. Okay, so we've gone from the heart, we've gone from the left ventricle, into the aorta.
Yeah.
The aorta then divides off and goes up and feeds the heart through the coronary system.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the aorta goes into arteries,
yeah,
into arterioles, down into capillaries. Capillaries, we then drop off the oxygen. Capillaries now pick up carbon dioxide and any waste products.
Yeah.
And now we're into veins. And I always remember veins as it's the vein to the heart.
It's the vein.
V-E-I-N. It's the way into the heart. So whenever we're talking about veins, we're always talking about going in to the heart.
Awesome. Yeah,
cool.
I love that.
So sending blood back to the heart.
Yeah,
sorry
and there's less of a blood pressure here because it's not directly leaving the heart at this point. So there is a lot less pressure in the veins than there is in the arteries.
They're not as muscular as the arteries.
They're not as muscular. And they contain valves because there's less blood pressure, we want to make sure that the blood keeps going upwards. We want to make sure that remains as this one-way street. So the valves help keep that going, help keep the prevent backflow, basically.
Prevent backflow, but which during exercise, or if let's say Fred, for example, we mentioned earlier, goes out for a run but doesn't cool down, he could experience blood pooling.
Yep.
Okay, which is where blood isn't getting returned back to the heart and is staying in the lower extremities, in the lower leg, because I haven't got movement to help with venous return.
venous return.
Okay, which is what we're talking about here, the blood going back to the heart. So another reason why we must understand the anatomy and physiology of the heart and circulatory system, because it applies to planning an effective cool down to ensure that the client doesn't experience blood pooling, or therefore the symptoms of that are feeling faint or dizzy, and therefore enjoying, and therefore frequency and adherence. So it goes off again.
And explaining to your client about why they might feel dizzy when they stop suddenly. And actually that's normal because of what's happening in the body. So yeah, totally.
So just like we mentioned earlier that capillaries drop off oxygen and pick up carbon dioxide and waste products, these now go into venules, which lead into veins, and there's two veins, and these are known as the superior and inferior vena cava. So I just want to make one quick comparison. You've got capillaries at the bottom with oxygen and carbon dioxide. Then if we moved up on one side, you'd have arterioles and venules. If we moved up again, you'd have arteries and veins. And then you've got the heart. So
we'll definitely link to an image.
They're almost, dare I say, functional opposites. If you look down an image, you could see that arterioles and venules, and then you've got. Does that make sense? Cool. So what I want to highlight here, as Hayley slowly is dying a death of her cold here, is the term superior and inferior doesn't mean that one vein is better than the other, which is a common question we get asked. Okay.
It's not. This one is superior. It's much better. It's that it's on top.
It's to do with the location above and below the heart. So the superior would be above the heart, whereas the inferior vena cava is to go in the bottom of the heart. Cool. Anything else? What does this system actually do, Hayley?
Good question.
So
it works closely with the other systems, like we've already said. So like with your energy system, your muscle system, etc. All of those work together, and it supplies oxygen and nutrients to our bodies by working alongside the respiratory system. At the same time, the circulatory system helps carry waste and carbon dioxide out of the body. So it's a pumping system.
So it's a pumping system
It's a road network.
It's a road network to get oxygen and nutrients to vital muscles and organs that need it at any one point.
Awesome.
So it's always working. And then therefore take away any rubbish out of the system as well.
And we need to know this because of obviously our clients and relating it back to the clients.
So let's go back to Fred then.
Let's go back to Fred.
So he's running. He wanted to do a 10K. He wants to run at higher intensities. So the amount of CO2 and waste products Fred creates is going to be greater. This means that his breathing rate's going to go up. His heart rate's going to go up to reflect this, to be able to deliver blood and oxygen to the working muscles, and therefore take away carbon dioxide and waste products from those working muscles. So the efficiency of that system has to be improved. Therefore, we're going to see a notable change in his VO2 score.
Yeah, absolutely. And this reminds me of a few clients that I used to work with, whereby they would say they would be worried that they were out of breath, and they didn't really understand why they were out of breath. And oh God, I'm so unfit. I shouldn't get to that point where I'm out of breath. So they would try and lower the intensity. But in reality, they just didn't understand that the benefit of their heart rate and their breathing rate going up is they're getting rid of all those waste products. So it's actually just a normal part of exercise.
And then within, say, level 3 PT, you've got interval training, fartlek training, short steady duration, long steady duration, inside intervals. You've got tempo intervals, cruise intervals, speed intervals, Tabata intervals. It's about the selection of these intervals to bring about a physiological change in their heart rate. To bring about a physiological adaptation, an anatomical I can't get my words out, an anatomical adaptation to the heart. What about by that particular interval? Awesome. So when we're talking about periodized planning, what is the goal of the first 3 or 4 weeks, and what do I want to get out of the heart and circulatory system as a goal in those first 4 weeks? And if that was the prerequisite, what is the next 4 weeks goal and the next 4 weeks goal, so I can program that. So if I measure my client's current status in, say, week 1 or week 0, by doing various CV tests, or whatever test you want to do, go look up exrx.net for those. There's plenty on there. I can then measure, manage, and monitor 3-4 weeks later, and 3-4 weeks later again. But the question is what is the goal of this particular training cycle or training phase or period, to say, right, I've done X, Y, and Z. This has been my energy systems selection. This has been my training system selection. This has been my exercise selection. This has been my intensity.
And as a result,
this is how my heart and circulatory system has adapted. And I can categorically say and tell that my clients' heart and lungs have adapted because of this test.
Yeah.
And therefore, that gives me the prerequisite to move on to the next 4 weeks and the next 4 weeks. So your planning is backed by a science foolproof plan.
Awesome.
Boom. Anything else you can add to it?
I could also add in there about hormones, really, in that we've said a lot about sort of oxygen and respiratory system,
energy systems, nervous system.
But the intensity and duration that Fred will be running at will impact on his hormones as well. So the hormones are produced by the endocrine system, and they are transported through the blood.
Which is module 7 of your level 3 A&P.
It is.
You don't need to understand the endocrine system at level 2.
No.
But level 3 you do.
And it's transported through the blood in the circulatory system. So all of that blood flow we were talking about is going to carry in there lots of vital nutrients, but vital nutrients, but also our hormones.
And hormones are chemical messengers.
Yeah,
that's what I want to say.
Yeah, nice.
Anything?
Hormones transfer information and instructions from one set of cells to another. So the aim is to then maintain homeostasis. That's what we want from it. So when Fred is running, he will sweat out lots of other salts and other electrolytes. To help maintain his homeostasis, the kidneys will release more salt. That salt is going to be carried within the blood. So it's really important to make sure that you understand the importance of the heart and circulatory system as a whole and how that even integrates with homeostasis and hormones.
And it's in the heart that hormone is actually produced by the heart to send a message to the kidneys to release more salt.
Yeah. So although the heart is not an endocrine gland, definitely worth us saying, the signal does come from what happens within the heart. So if the heart is beating faster, then the kidneys will release more salt from the body.
So I think the key thing here is when you look at the heart and lungs, I've mentioned it already, we're talking about the relationship is integral between the endocrine system, the nervous system, the energy systems, the musculoskeletal system, and so forth. So
everything.
You can't learn one without understanding the other.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything to summarize then as we wrap up and go into today's Power Hour?
No, I think that's really solid information about the heart and circulatory system. There's a lot of information in there, lots of long words. So definitely go and download the show notes so that you can read what those words actually look like as we're saying them. And you can also access the images that we're talking about as well.
And if you've enjoyed today's episode, even if we have had the odd blunder where we've had to go in and out of a room and this has been edited and you've not seen it through Hayley having coughing fits, please drop us a 5-star review below. Let's push FitPro Sessions up the iTunes podcast chart. And we had a wicked first week. We went in obviously right at the very bottom, and I think we peaked at the mid-20s. That's where we're sitting right now, which would be really cool if you could help us push this that little bit further. So with no further ado, let's jump into this week's Power Hour. See you later.
See you later.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a FitPro? This is the FitPro Sessions Podcast with Parallel Coaching.
Revision Power Hour. Good morning, Neale here from Parallel Coaching, and over the next 60 minutes I'm going to guide you through 2 structured revision sessions. Now you may join me for the first half and do 1 session, or do the full Power Hour, which is 2 revision sessions. Because if you're like most people that are sitting their fitness exams, their exam is in 6 to 8 weeks, maybe 12 plus weeks time. And so there's no urgency created to ever start revising right now, today. We put it off, and we put it off until just a week or 2 before the exam, when suddenly it becomes urgent and very important before we start revising. That leads to overwhelm, confusion, frustration, and we look back and we wish in hindsight that we'd started sooner. So the idea of this Power Hour is to create some urgency today Create some urgency inside a 30-minute for session 1 or 60 minutes for the full 2 sessions so that you start revising today and not leave it to the last minute. Which means you drop all of the confusion, drop all of the overwhelm, drop all of the frustration around your studies and go at your studies by little, a little becomes a lot. So you walk into your exam fully confident, fully prepared and knowing, not guessing when it comes to the questions. Now, it doesn't matter if you're on a level 2, level 3 or level 4 qualification on a fitness exam. You could use this for your learner achievement pack, your coursework, your worksheets. What we're going to go through is a series of questions of planning for 5 minutes, followed by a 20-minute doing session where you're actually going to set at doing your revision. And that creates the urgency because you're going to test yourself and you've got 7 minutes at the end to review what you've done, do a couple of short tests, which you're going to set, and I'm going to show you how, and then you're going to have a 5-minute break. So that is a full 30-minute session 1, and you can repeat that twice for the full power hour. Now, to hold you accountable, I appreciate this is a video, but I want you to tag me in. Okay, inside the student zone or below this video, tag me in and let me know what it is that you're planning to do, what you're going to set out to. Then once you've done it, let me know that you've completed either just session 1, the full 30 minutes, or the full power hour for 60 minutes, 2 structured revision sessions. You know, and I'd love to hold you accountable and find out, because I can ask you more questions and test you to hold that urgency so that you come back time and time again, a couple of times a week to repeat the power hour, which means you walk into your exam in 4, 6, 8 or 12 weeks time, however long it is away, to score top marks and walk out knowing and not guessing, which means you can go on and work with clients in the future and provide them a 5-star stellar service. So I'm going to flip my screen around. I'm going to take you through the plan, do and review, where you're going to spend 5 minutes planning, 20 minutes doing, and then 7 minutes reviewing and relaxing. So I'm going to spin my screen around and I'll see you in 30 minutes time. See you later. So let's start with your plan. Set a timer on your phone for 3 minutes and we're going to answer 4 key questions. Question number 1, what specific topic will you revise in the next 20 minutes? For example, if you're on your level 3 anatomy and physiology, you might choose module 1, the heart and circulatory system. Next, question 2, what are the 3 to 5 buzzing questions you have about this topic? Grab a notepad and pen and write down your 3 to 5 questions now. Moving on to question 3, what mode of learning will you use? Is this going to be your manual? Are you going to use YouTube or the Revision Mastery Bootcamp? Are you going to jump inside the cheat sheets or are you going to go back to previous notes? Question 4, how will you test yourself in 20 minutes time to ensure you've learned what you set out to? Is this going to be a series of mock questions? Are you going to write down 3 to 5 key points? Just know that it's key to test your knowledge on a regular basis. Next, you're going to set a timer for doing the revision for 20 minutes. So set a timer on your phone for 20 minutes and set towards answering the 4 questions from your planning. Once your 20 minutes is up, you've now got 7 minutes to review and have a break. And we're going to answer 3 questions here. Number 1 is write down 3 to 5 key notes that you've learned. Try not to overthink this. Literally write down in short bullet note form to avoid pages and pages of notes. What are the 3 to 5 key notes that you've learned from your 4 questions you set out to? Next, you're going to test your knowledge in 2 minutes and check your understanding. This could be 1 or 2 mock questions. It could literally be a review of your notes and pick out key points to test whether or not you've learnt it, yes or no. Again, try not to overthink this. Finally, you're going to set a timer on your phone for 5 minutes. Now you can head over, grab a cup of tea, cup of coffee, a bite. Hi, I'm Neil Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a FitPro doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a FitPro? This is the FitPro Sessions Podcast with Parallel Coaching.